Computer. Okay, we're recording. Very good, folks. Welcome, everyone. Another week. We're forging ahead. So looking at schedules and everything, we've got this week, and we're actually going to cover two topics tonight. They're actually relatively short topics, so we'll probably take a quick break in between, but we probably will not be here more than an hour and a half or so, or 2 hours at the most. So we'll see. So next week we'll have another meeting, and that'll be the last one before Thanksgiving break. Next week is the 20th of November. Then we'll take the week of Thanksgiving off, and we'll come back on December 4th, and probably try to wrap up December 4th. And I'll go over. I might wait till the end to go over the last assignments and everything until Kylie logs on. But that's the schedule. So 3 weeks left tonight, November 20th and December 4th, probably. Okay. So very good. I did send you back the program of activities that you did. Look through those. And so the other assignments, if you haven't turned in the SWOT analysis, get that to me. And then the first reading, I have a couple of those, I believe, yes. I'll get those back to you before next week. So those two assignments are the two out there currently out there that I'm looking for, is the SWOT analysis and the first reading. I did email you two readings, and you don't have to do both. You only select one of those. But there are two journal articles from the Journal of Ag Education. One is, and they're kind of both extension programs, but they're kind of evaluation type studies. So evaluating extension-based leadership development programs in the southern U.S. and evaluating extension-based adult education for agricultural labor supervisors. So two different studies. Just read one of those and then give me a critique, what you thought. And we'll probably come back at the beginning of next week and talk about both of those. So try to have those done and turned into me before class next week. And then we'll just discuss them at the beginning of class next week, what you thought about those evaluation studies that were.
How long do you want those?
How long? Just a couple pages, same thing. Just a review of the reading. Just highlight what you thought. If you thought it was a good evaluation, bad, what you thought about the how they did it, the questions they asked, the report, their recommendations. So just a couple pages is fine. Okay. All right, so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to look at two things. So last week we looked at, because all of you relate to secondary ag education, we looked at national quality. Well, first of all, we looked at content standards, the national AFNR content standards for what your courses should be teaching. And then we looked at the program evaluation, the quality program standards, the national quality program standards versus the Idaho quality program standards. So we kind of had both ends of the coin there, both sides of the coin, of planning your courses, planning your curriculum to justify what you're teaching in your classroom, and then looking at evaluating your total program, curriculum, instruction, facilities, experiential education, FFA, the teacher, your certification, all of that from top to bottom. So now we want to kind of wrap that up. The first topic tonight is going to be an action plan. So normally in program planning and evaluation, you're going to plan a program. You're going to do your best to look at your stakeholders, what they need, the audience of that program, and then you're going to do an evaluation, and that's what national quality program standards are, or Idaho quality program standards. But then if you're going to do that cycle, obviously you should use your evaluation to improve the program. And we said this way back at the beginning of the semester, is really your evaluation is going to make a decision, one of like three decisions. Is the program running perfectly? You don't need any changes, which is very rare. You can always try to improve things. Does it need changes, whether minor to significant changes? Or as last resort, should it be scrapped? Should it be closed? Is it not needed? Is it not meeting its goals? So looking at your evaluation, making those decisions, then doing an action plan. Okay, so obviously, let's pick two things. So Tom, we'll start with you. You're doing the land laboratory, okay? Obviously, you're doing the evaluation of that land laboratory and the decision at the end. And again, you planned your whole next year with all the planning and then the planting and then the evaluation. Then at the end of that year, doing the evaluation and making a decision, is it worth it? Did the students learn? Was it worth the time, the effort, the energy, the money? And then make that decision. Are you going to continue to use that land laboratory? Okay. Kylie's evaluating her whole AgEd program. So that's a little different because you're probably not going to evaluate it and say close it. But obviously using the quality program standards, how will it be improved? Okay. Now, Trish, you're looking at solar. Solar is a type of program that very similar to the land laboratory that depending on an evaluation, that couldn't actually not be continued because you only had less than a dozen students or so this year. It was the first year, but how long are you going to give that program? Granted, making changes, making recommendations, changes to transportation. Okay, then you're going to make that decision. Is, well, do we give it another year? Do we give it another 2 years? Is it worth doing for the Idaho FFA Association, or should it be stopped? Maybe it was a great try, great idea, but the participation level doesn't justify the cost, the expense, the time, and everything like that. So now what we're going to talk about right now then is based on the quality program standards. Okay, again, you're not going to close your program, but how would you use that then to do an action plan? Okay, because that's the closing the loop. Is now that we've done the evaluation of the program, now let's do an action plan. Now, this is actually focusing on a whole secondary ag program following like an NQPS evaluation. But you can do it for anything. You can do it for an international exchange program. You can do it for solar, anything. Is based on the evaluation or the recommendations in the evaluation. Now let's do a plan. Okay, how can we improve this? What do we need to change? How are we going to change it? Who's going to change it? What resources do we have to change it, to improve it? So that's what we want to look at first, is doing an action plan based on an IQPS type of evaluation. Okay, so let me share, and hopefully this will go better than it went last week. Okay. No. Okay. But somehow I lost. Stop sharing. I'm not sure why it's doing this to me. Bless you. There we go. That's better. Okay. So you should be able to see the action plans PowerPoint. Okay. Thumbs up's good. All right. So let's assume we've done a program. It could be Kylie's program or Tom, your program. But let's assume you did the NQPS or the IQPS evaluation. So now you're going to work on doing an action plan. So this is just the evaluation process we talked about numerous times. Advisory committee, okay, get them involved. How you do the evaluation, like I said last week, with IQPS or NQPS, is you can divvy it up and assign that certain type parts of the evaluation to the advisory committee. You, the teacher, shouldn't be doing it all yourself. You don't have the time, you don't have the resources. You want to get those advisory committee members involved in looking at different components. One or more could look at the instructional program, the curriculum, because that's pretty large. One could look at SAE and experiential education. One could look at the FFA, leadership development. One could look at facilities, okay? You could have one look at the instructor, but obviously you're pretty familiar with that, or your qualifications, education, certification, things like that. So you're going to involve the advisory committee. You're going to do that plan, how to conduct the evaluation. You're going to collect data. And again, that could be over several months. You don't want to try doing it relatively short time period, but you also don't want to make it extended because it just takes up too much time. And you're not doing this every year, remember. You're doing it maybe every third year, okay? So you may do this over a course of several months. Again, normally your advisory committee may meet only once or twice a year, but when you're doing this evaluation, you may actually even meet monthly for a few months to get the evaluation done and make sure you're collecting the data. Then you're conducting the evaluation. We're going to talk later, the second topic for tonight is an evaluation report, okay? But again, IQPS, you have it all built in and you're filling in all that form. That's kind of your evaluation report, okay? Now with something else, like Trish, the solar program, you're going to write up your own evaluation report, and we'll talk about what should be included a little later. But obviously, whether it's the form IQPS is in or a separate evaluation, depending on who you have to report it to, you're going to write up an evaluation report. And then what we're going to talk about right now is action plan. So again, if you don't close the program, and that might be a recommendation, but let's say you recommend that you make changes to it, okay? And we'll take solar because that's a good example. The FFA's done it once. Trish is going to take a look at it, collect data, make recommendations. We talked about, obviously, the whole thing about the transportation's one issue. So based on the evaluation, you may make recommendations on the transportation aspect to getting to camp, getting the FFA members to camp, okay? So how the action plan. So obviously transportation could be part of the action plan. And how's it going to be improved? How's it going to be funded? Who's going to do it? Those sorts of things. So that's what we're going to look at as part of an action plan. So it's kind of the final step of the evaluation process because you've done the evaluation and then you've actually written up the report, okay? And I could have put these either order tonight, but I just decided to do action plan first. But then the final part is now what, okay? Now that you have the assessment of your program, you have the data, okay? You've made recommendations. So now following through and making plans for program improvement. So it's really the final step in the process, closing the circle and making plans for improvement. You can have different titles. Okay, this is action plans are what is called through IQPS and NQPS. But you could kind of build it into your recommendations if you wanted, kind of at the end of your report, or it could be a separate standalone document that based on the evaluation, here's our action plans for the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, or whatever. So it can have different titles. It can be combined with your report. It can be separate from your report. It doesn't really matter, but it is a good thing to have because you don't want to just end with recommendations, okay? Now, Trish, with the solar program, is your evaluation may just have your report and recommendations and let the FFA board make decisions and action plans, okay? So it depends on who you're reporting to, whether you include an action plan or you let the administration of the program come up with an action plan. That's another option also. So action plans, action steps, program improvement plan, you can call it different things, but it's taking the results of that evaluation. If you included, specifically if you included recommendations, just like any study, you have conclusions and then recommendations. It's taking those recommendations, putting them in a document and a plan for moving forward. Program growth target plan, you can call it whatever you want, really. Okay, so this is associated with NQPS, program growth target plan. So here, to grow the program, and like any good program, like our program here, our undergraduate program, our graduate program, you want hopefully to show it growing and succeeding. So the program growth target plan is kind of associated with NQPS. They have a guide, okay? Help local programs identify, prioritize, and organize growth targets into a manageable plan. So that's taking the evaluation, and then let's say, when we say growth targets, don't get an idea it's just numbers of students participating. Now, that might be true for the solar program, but let's say the land laboratory, Tom, is maybe your plan is to not only grow student numbers participating, but improve production. Maybe it's to have more equipment. Maybe it's to purchase your own equipment. So that's kind of the outgrowth of the evaluation of just your land laboratory, is to identify where you want to grow, prioritize it, and then set targets. And that targets may be production based, what crop you want to have, how many, I want to say bushels or whatever, or bales that you take off of it. Or it could be other things, student hours, alumni participation, purchasing your own equipment, or whatever. Result in a realistic and clear set of action steps for growth. So how is, going back, I keep jumping around for your examples, but they're good examples, is back to the solar program, is how are you going to grow numbers of the solar, I shouldn't say you, Trish, but how is the Idaho FFA going to grow numbers for the solar camp? Okay, if you improve transportation, that might help out. But is it timing? Did it overlap with other things that were going on? Should it be a different month, a different week? So looking at those realistic steps for growth. Program leadership should involve their advisory committee and other stakeholders in completing the plan. That's pretty obvious. Tom, you would involve your advisory committee. You may involve your administration, because I know reading your POA, they looked at building the athletic fields. Is that off the table, or may that come back on the table again? So you may involve your administration in it. You may involve your alumni, your supporters that let you use the land and the equipment and things like that. Trish, with the camp, is obviously this Idaho FFA board has final say. So they should be involved in completing, or they may be in charge of writing the action plan. Because with the board together with the state officers, or Clara Lee and the state officers, they would be planning this coming summer's camp, summer 2020. So could they take your results and then sit down together, and it might be clearly in the state officers, and then they present it to the board, but the board has final say as to what are the steps for improving the 2020 camp, if you have it, and then going forward. But maybe the recommendation is not to hold it. We don't know yet, okay? So NQPS, we talked about last week. This is just review, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Is obviously, if you did this, you're going to have at least one or more of your advisory committee members looking at standard 1, because where Idaho separates them, the national ones put them all together, 1A, B, C, and D. But so that's a lot of things for one person to look at, where you might have one person looking at the curriculum and the instruction. You may have, and then I kind of like the way Idaho does it better than this, because I can see curriculum and instruction and assessment together, because that's all related to the instructional program. Facilities and equipment is kind of different. Yes, it supports the instructional program, but to me, it's also a little different. So you could separate these out different ways. However, you wanted to assign an advisory committee member to do the evaluation. And it's just natural that, yes, facilities and equipment support instruction, but they also can be looked at a little separately. So SAE, experiential learning, leadership, we talked about all these last week. Partnerships, school and community with the alumni, how you market your program, and then the teacher characteristics and qualifications. And then finally, NQPS has the separate one, program planning and evaluation, that Idaho doesn't. Okay. So we said this last week, is in the evaluation, you're going to evaluate, does it meet or exceed expectations? Is it a 3, 4, or 5? If it meets expectations, fine. If it exceeds it, or if it's exemplary, it's ideal, it's great. And then the bottom one's 1 or 2, either not at expectation or approaching expectation, but it right now doesn't meet a quality expectation. It's not there yet. It needs work. Okay. So going through here, and then Idaho ones are slightly different as we looked at last week. But if you're at the bottom, then you're going to want to look at those indicators to say, well, where do we want to be? So compile your current level performance, 1 through 5 of each quality indicator. So you're going to look at everything, and you've got that indicator. Are they going back up? Are they 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? All right. Ideally, you want to be all 3s, 4s, and 5s, but that's probably not likely to happen. You're probably going to be down in 1 and 2 in some of those areas. So compile the current level performance, place the quality indicators in order strongest. Actually, strongest to weakest, I got those backwards. Yeah, strongest should be 5. Okay. Compile your current level of performance, 1 to 5, with quality indicators. Yeah, it should be 1 weakest to 5 strongest. So again, 1 not at expectation to 5 exemplary. So if you put them all in that order, then you've got the best ones at the top, and then all the way down to the worst ones at the bottom. So 1 and 2, potential areas of growth to improve the program. So you might be able to change things that are 3, 4s, and 5s, especially 3s, because 3's right in the middle. 4s and 5, yeah, you might be able to tinker with them a little bit. But if it's at a 5 already, why spend your energy improving something that's already exemplary? Whereas if you spent your energy and your growth and your action steps in improving a 1 and 2, you're going to get more bang for your buck. You're going to see more growth quicker by focusing on a 1 and a 2 than you are doing a 4, focusing on a 4 or 5. Okay. So 3 to 5 are strong areas that help to build a strong foundation. But again, you don't want to spend a lot of time on 3s to 4s or 5s. I would start with the lowest, 1, and then work your way up, 2s and 3s. So select 10 quality indicators to focus on. Again, you're not going to be, and depending on the quality of your program, you're not going to be able to focus on everything at once. So don't worry about it. Focus on what is most important. So the most urgent is 1, the most urgent, to 10 less urgent. And then important, 1 most important to 10 less important. So what this is doing is, now that you've ranked everything, you've got all the 5s, 4s, all the way down to 1s. Now you're going to pick 10 of them. Now, would they all 10 be 1s? Maybe not. You might have some 2s, some 3s. Okay. But what's the most urgent? What is something, we're almost halfway through the school year now. We're November. Okay. January is halfway through. But maybe there's something that's a 1 or a 2 that can be changed quickly before next year. Maybe you need better welders, okay? Maybe you need more equipment in the ag mechanics laboratory. And maybe there's enough funds that you can order that and have it, if not for the end of the school year in the spring, for the beginning of the next school year in August. So that would be, urgent and something you could do relatively quickly, important. So it could be 1 and 1. It's very important for instruction. It's very urgent and something you can do quickly. Now let's take another one. Let's take one that maybe is a greenhouse. And that's something that may not be real urgent and maybe a little less urgent. And it's also something you're not going to do before the next school year. That may take a year or 2 to do. So while it may be probably not as urgent, it's still important. Okay. It's still important for the instructional program, but it's also more long-term or maybe intermediate term, not real short-term. It's not like ordering a welder and in a month you have a new welder. You can't just order up a greenhouse unless it's a modular one or whatever. But if it's a structural greenhouse, that's probably going to take a year or two or so to add that to the program. So you're going to judge everything as to the urgency versus the importance level, and you can't do it all. So pick 10 of them. Oh, welcome, Kylie. Just saw you joined us. Okay. So which indicators are most urgent to address to ensure near-term viability of the program? So what are something that you can change now for next semester or next school year? Because that's something that's relatively easy to do and can show quick improvements. Which indicators are most important to address your program? Which indicators are most important to address your program meets student, school, community, and workforce needs in the long term? So maybe a greenhouse is more long term. Maybe you have a growing horticulture industry and you don't have a greenhouse facility and you need one for your instruction. So that would be an indicator that's still important, but it's more long-term, not real short-term. And that's fine, but it still might be one of your top 10 indicators that it's something that you want changed to improve your program. And again, Tom, your land laboratory is a good example of this. It's one of those things that's maybe not near-term, but let's say you didn't have one and you're making recommendations to have a land laboratory. It's something that maybe you can rectify in a year or less, or maybe a year and a half or whatever. So again, without purchasing land or anything, but putting in steps, a plan to add a land laboratory, it's something that can be done not long-term, not years and years, but probably, within a year or so. Okay. So short-term goals. Select up to 3 quality indicators to focus on in the next 12 months. These are things that can show rapid improvement. So, looking at your current score, what's your target? Okay. For this indicator, can we improve it relatively quickly? Okay. So what evidence is needed to achieve the target goal? Is it new equipment? Is it a revised curriculum? Is it a new course? Okay. So what do you need to make improvements, and then action steps for achieving it? Can you do something in the next 2 months, 60 days? Like I said, I keep going back to the welder. Maybe you have a piece of equipment that's out of date, and maybe given enough budget, you can order that piece of equipment and have it there within a couple months, or 6 months. Now, 6 months from now, we're at the end of the school year, all right, close to the end of the school year. But, what can you do in 6 months? And then 9 months gets you almost to the beginning of the next school year. So looking at your indicators short term is there might be something that can be improved within a couple months, or within 6 months, or within 9 months. And again, knowing that we're almost to the end of 2019 and you've got half the school year left, you can already be thinking about what can we change to improve the instruction starting in August 2020 for next school year. And then who's responsible for doing it? Okay. Is it the ag teacher? Is you the ag teacher? Is it an advisory committee? Is it an alumni? Tom, your alumni is very involved in your land laboratory. Okay. So who's responsible? And maybe the school administration. Now, if it's a greenhouse, then obviously you're going to have a lot of players involved there with the school board, the administration, who's going to fund it. If it's funded through the state, might be funded through alumni. Okay. But that's more long-term. That's not real short-term goals. Okay. So review the action plan. So now you've been through all your criteria. You know what is high on the priority list and low on the priority list. You're going to focus on certain things, not all of them. Revisit the action plan every quarter, 3 months, to assess progress towards the goals. This is a good activity for your advisory committee. Okay. Are you making progress um, on your action plan. Like I said, some things can be done real quickly. Others are going to take a little longer. But if your advisory committee meets every or twice a year, maybe, well, there it's not 6 months if you meet fall and spring. But if you do your IQPS evaluation, if you develop an action plan, and then you've assigned responsibilities, then it's probably the job of your advisory committee members or the board to revisit that at every meeting that they come to. Are you making progress? Have you made purchases? Have you changed curriculum? Are we reaching those targets to improve that program? Okay. Now, Trish, with the camp, obviously, if there's an action plan in place for the camp, then as they plan next year, they're going to want to make sure they start hitting those targets with, the planning, the reservation, the transportation, the recruitment of students. So you're going to be looking at the planning process, because it's kind of like a standalone. Every camp year is like a standalone program. And I don't know how clearly does this when the state officers, now we only elect the new state officers in April, but I'm sure planning begins even much prior to the election of the state officers that are going to be in charge of it. So along that planning timeline are they reaching those targets for planning it? I mean, we do the same thing with CDs on campus. We do the same thing with SLC. The SLC class that we're organizing here, that we selected the members for that. They're going to start the class in January, and then January, February, and March are all planning for SLC. So having that action plan in place and regularly looking at that to make sure you're hitting your targets. Okay. Make adjustments in the action plan to stay on track. If you're going down the road and you see there's something not happening and something's got to change, can you alter that plan to make sure that you're going to reach the goal of having everything planned by the next time the program is offered? That could be the next growing season for the land laboratory. It could be the next solar camp. Or obviously, Kylie, your whole program, it's every school year is a new rotation. Are you ready for the school year to start in August? Have you made changes, improvements before the next school year rolls around? Okay. So communicate the plan. Okay. So you've gone through the steps of doing the IQPS evaluation. If you've done an action plan, you've identified those indicators you want to focus on, maybe 10 of them. You've ranked them. Okay. Are there 1s and 2s and 3s in there? And then you've developed your plan and assigned responsibility for it. Well, now you've got to communicate that plan. It depends on who developed it. Your advisory committee may have developed it with your support, with your help, but it should be printed and made available to all the stakeholders. So if your advisory committee did it, well, who should see that action plan? Well, obviously school administration, school board. When we talked about advisory committees at the beginning of the semester, we talked about the school board approving them. Well, if they did that, and that's a good step, and then your advisory committee did the evaluation and did the action plan, now go back and report to the school board. Show them what was done. Show them the IQPS evaluation. Show them the action plan. Okay? And again, it's getting their buy-in and support for the program improvement plan. Now, that could be the alumni. Tom, your alumni is very involved in your land laboratory. So, again, I think you had that plan built into your plan even, is getting approval of the alumni. Well, at the end of the year, when you do the evaluation, you're going to turn around and report back to the alumni, was it a successful growing season? How many student hours were involved? How much income did you make off the crop, the harvest, those sorts of things. So you're going to report back to the alumni what was the result of that land laboratory over that growing season. Now, parents may be interested. Obviously, if you do the whole evaluation, is you can use it, and we'll talk about reporting after the break, but you can use that to gain support from the parents. Is here's the evaluation of our program, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Here's our plan for improvement so that we're meeting the needs of their sons or daughters who are enrolled in the program. So if you put a report together for your administration or board or whoever, give it to the parents too. Share it with the members, the students enrolled in AgEd. So again, you're showing that you're not just, okay, here's the class, take it or leave it. You've done a good evaluation of your program based on accredited standards, IQPS or NQPS. You've done an action plan. Here's the plan for improvement. And it gets them to support you and buy in. And then same thing with the FFA chapter, other stakeholders, those sorts of things. So it's a package. You've done the evaluation. You've written up the report. You've done the action plan. Now you're going to use that to promote the program and get buy-in for finishing the plan, for finishing the improvement, at least on this year for these indicators. Okay. So this is just going to give an example of each of these indicators. So like picking quality indicator 3, technical content is aligned with core academic content standards. We talked about the content standards last week. Collaborate with core academic teachers. If you're teaching, I think we use this example later on. Well, yeah, soils. So here, work with the English teacher when teaching about public speaking and writing speeches. If they're doing creed speaking, if they're doing prepared speaking, extemporaneous speaking, if you're covering that in your class, and that could be what the 410 class, professional or personal development or whatever, if you're covering it in your class and you have those content standards, then reach out to those teachers to get their support. Maybe you may use them to judge the events, but you're going to get buy-in by collaborating with those core teachers. Next example is soils. I always love this example because it's so easy. Coordinate lessons on soil science and judging with the chemistry teacher. We do soils every fall in Idaho. Okay, every district does it. We have the area or district events followed by the state event. Okay, so that ag teacher should be working with that chemistry teacher and working together to help prepare the team or help teach soil science in the classroom. Okay, yeah, you, the ag teacher, have the knowledge, but a chemistry teacher knows all the chemical things related to soils. They may not know the structure or the crops or the land uses, but they would certainly know about the chemical makeup, and combine that together. If your students have taken chemistry or are taking chemistry, that's a good way of building support for your program. So soil structure, nutrients, we use those. So that's one indicator on improving the content standards within your courses. Quality indicator 2, looking at example of facilities and equipment. Facility is in compliance with existing local, state, and federal safety and health standards. To meet expectations, you need to contact your local or state facilities director about health and safety requirements. And then to move beyond expectation, conduct your own safety audit. After reading the EPA guide to air and water quality, is your facility being tested? When they're welding, is the ventilation system adequate? Is it maintaining good air quality in that shop facility? Develop a plan for improving air quality around welding areas using the National Air Filtration Guidelines for welding fumes. So again, you have it inspected, can meet expectations, but then how can you go above expectations to do your own safety audit and make sure that the air quality is safe when you're using those welding facilities? Okay, so program improvement. Experiential learning through SAE. So quality indicator 5, students maintain accurate SAE documentation to meet state and local requirements. So documenting their activities. So to meet expectations, students complete a work journal that reflects their growth at work. Every student should be doing that. Students complete the skills, competencies, and knowledge page of the FFA Proficiency Award application. So are they learning skills on the job? Are they gaining knowledge? Did they gain knowledge by working in the land laboratory? Okay, that's experiential learning. Moving beyond expectations, could be on a growth plan, have students keep a portfolio of records that is reflected upon annually in relation to their career goals. If they want to be a farmer, if they're working in the land laboratory, are they doing a portfolio of records of everything they've learned on the land laboratory? Maybe they want to go back to soils. Maybe they want to be work in soils, work for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, the BLM, okay, Forest Service or whatever. So if they're learning about soils, okay, maybe they have experiential learning, maybe their SAE is related to soils, and they're keeping a portfolio of records annually if their goal is to work in the soils as a soil scientist or with the NRCS or something like that. Okay, so looking at each quality indicator, where you're at and where you can move to is, can you, if you meet expectations, can you move up to exceeding them, moving beyond? Leadership then, let's look at quality indicator 3. Students build a progressive leadership personal development plan. Okay, maybe a freshman, they're going to do creed speaking. Maybe a sophomore, they may move to extemporaneous. Maybe as a junior, they may move to prepared speaking. Okay, so meets students, lead students through the life knowledge goal setting lesson on the FFA page. Life knowledge is out there. You teach it in your classroom. So that basically meets it if you're teaching life knowledge skills. To go beyond that, guide students to complete the personal growth plan module on the FFA page. So now, how am I going to grow by doing different CDEs or LDEs? How am I going to grow leadership-wise, my personal growth plan? That could be through their SAE, could be through CDEs, LDEs, maybe the new, we just saw the email today, the new 212-360, okay? The new title for that. Maybe it's going to that. Maybe the following year it's going to Washington Leadership Conference. So having that student or all students develop that personal growth plan. Again, improving on this quality indicator. School and community partnerships. So the indicator, teacher participates in key stakeholder activities. Okay? Well, meets expectations, gather ideas for interacting with the local agriculture community. Or moving beyond it is actively seek leadership positions within stakeholder activities that complement your skills and the program. Now, that could be the alumni, or it could be the Farm Bureau, or it could be young farmers, okay? It can be other things. So not just getting ideas from the local agriculture community, but it's being involved with the local agriculture community. Maybe it's the local NRCS board, soil conservation board, the local water utility, okay? The irrigation district, the water district, something like that, okay? So how is you as a teacher building those partnerships and improving your program? Not just getting ideas that meets expectations, but being actively involved in the community by seeking leadership positions. Then 6, certified agriculture teacher, professional growth. Indicator, each teacher is state certified to teach agriculture, food, and natural resources. Well, meets expectations, you're certified. Going beyond is begin a post-baccalaureate degree, a master's degree, add additional certifications. If you don't have biology, if you don't have, now our students used to do natural science, now they're doing biology, but they can graduate without biology. If they don't take the biology praxis, you can graduate, you can get certified without getting the biology endorsement. So maybe you add that biology endorsement, or you add an economics endorsement. You know, by taking additional economics courses, you can get an economics endorsement. So going beyond expectation is not that you have a bachelor's degree and you're certified, but you're working towards a master's degree, okay, post-baccalaureate, additional professional development, those sorts of things, okay? So that's would be on your action plan. All right, so let me stop sharing. Okay, how are we doing on time? 50 minutes, I got about good time. Okay, so this kind of brings to conclusion what we talked about last week, okay? So IQPS in Idaho or NQPS, involving your advisory committee in doing it, doing a plan for doing the evaluation, then going through and assigning different standards to different advisory committee members, having them evaluate them, okay? And then once you have your ranking, 5 through 1, put them in order, pick 10 of them, and they don't have to be the bottom 10, okay? Now, like I said earlier, you don't want to focus all on number 5s because they're already exemplary. But you may have some 1s, some 2s, some 3s. And then how important is it, and how critical is it, urgent is it? Some of those you may be able to do in short term, a couple months, 6 months. Some of them you may be able to do in a year. But some of them you may be more long term. But then you're going to do that action plan for how to improve on those low ranking criteria. And then your advisory board can look at that whenever they meet. Now, again, same thing. Now, IQPS is a little different because you can do IQPS every year. But although you're not really doing a complete revision every year, but you want to look at, if you do that action plan, you want to look at how can we continue, it's continual improvement is what it is. Continually improve our program by focusing on maybe 10 at a time, a variety of 1, 2s, and 3s. And when you meet something or you improve it, check it off and go to the next one. So it's a continual improvement process. That's why it can be circle, okay, is evaluation, recommendations, action plan, and then when that's improved, go to the next one and improve. It's a continual improvement process. Unfortunately, not every ag program in Idaho does it. I can't speak for other states, how active NQPS is in other states. I do know that when they created NQPS, they really promoted it. The National Council promoted it. Obviously, IQPS got a big bill support when it was built into the Idaho Ag Initiative, okay? So now it's something you can put in for every year to try to get that funding from the division. So it became very, very important. However, I know there's still programs out there that don't apply, even though they may not make it for the additional funding. Is if you're a quality ag teacher, you should still be doing it just for the sheer fact of wanting to improve your program. And yes, it takes time, and yes, it takes energy, but it doesn't have to all be on you, the ag teacher. It can fall to your advisory committee also. But a good, dedicated ag teacher will want to do it, regardless if they get the funding from the division, just to improve the program. And it'll look good for your advisory committee. It will look good for your administration. It'll look good for your school board. And yes, you may not be able to get that new greenhouse, maybe in the long term, maybe 2 or 3 years you can. Tom, you've made efforts to get that land laboratory up and running, okay? So you may not be able to get everything on the wish list, but if you have an action plan and you share that with your stakeholders and you get them to support it, and again, they may not support everything that's on your wish list. You're not going to get every dream thing that you want, but if you have that plan, you're more likely to get those things to improve your program. Okay, very good. So good timing, 50 minutes in. Let's take a quick 8-minute break or so. Yeah, 8 minutes. I got 3:52 right now. So we'll come back right at 4 o'clock, and we'll talk about a evaluation report now, okay? And then we'll kind of wrap up by 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock your time down there. Is that right? 4 to 5? Yeah, 5 to 6. Okay, so 8-minute break, and we'll come back.
Dr. Connors, are you going to post PowerPoints?
I have not been doing that.
I know.
I
I was
can either
looking,
email them to you or I can post them on BB Learn.
would you mind putting them on BB Learn? I don't know if anybody else wants to look at them, but I know
I'll
I was
try to get
looking for
it to the
something,
next.
so I had a question, and
Okay.
yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
I'll try to get it in the next 2 days. I'll try to put all those PowerPoints up on BB Learn.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Very good. Quick break. Okay, folks, my computer says 4 o'clock, so let's reconvene. So we're going to go into before I go into the second part of reporting, doing an evaluation report, I do want to talk about something. Kylie, did you get the email back when I sent you your strategic plan report back?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit with Kylie. So did you do this through AET?
Yeah.
Okay. The good thing is nowadays, and I'm not an expert in AET by no means, but it is a great vehicle to use for your students, your record keeping, but also for your program. Okay, when you're doing an evaluation of your program, whether you do IQPS, utilizing that program, and they keep changing it and improving it, and I have to give them credit because, and again, they know AgEd inside and out, and they keep developing new reports and everything that help you as an ag teacher do an evaluation of your program. So Kylie did the strategic planning report, and I made a lot of comments on there. But the good thing is right there in the program, it has the program mission statement that we talked about at the beginning of the semester, vision statements for your program, and then it does a SWOT analysis. It doesn't do it. You put in your SWOT analysis, and you and your students or your advisory board look at the program and put in what are your strengths, what are the weaknesses, what are your opportunities and the threats to the program. And I made some comments on Kylie's there too. And then it also has goals and outcomes. So you can make your goals for that year. All right. You did your SWOT analysis. Then you can make your goals for the year and then look at the outcomes and judge your progress right there in the program. But what jumped out at me, Kylie, I wanted to ask, did you do the veterans thing, the Veterans Day program?
Yes, we did, and we hadn't finished it before I sent that to you. So
yeah, you sent this to me a week or more ago. So how did it go? I mean, was it was the other day on the 11th?
It was during the day. For our assembly, we invite a bunch of veterans in to come and observe. And so last year, our security people asked if we would help with kids. And then this year we volunteered to do it again. And it went really well. We had kids in, we have a courtesy room for the veterans when they come in.
Okay.
So we had 4 or 5 kids in there that welcomed them, opened doors, escorted them into their seats. And then we had about 15 kids out in the parking lot, making sure they went to the right place and were directed where they needed to go.
Excellent. So it was, how many veterans did you have?
I actually don't know that number. I know it was more than they planned. Okay. They ran out of seats and had to go bring more in.
Good. Excellent. So right there, it was in her AET program for planning the program activities for the chapter. You planned it this summer or whenever you did it with your officers. And again, I just jumped out at me because obviously it just happened November 11th. But yeah, it's a good, AET is a great program to use to do especially with an ag chapter. If you're doing your whole planning with your chapter officers, program activities, it allows you to plug everything in so you have it electronically and you can print that out and give it to obviously you'd want to share it with your administration, or share it with your advisory committee, but also share it with your administration and everything. And it's just another vehicle to use, not only to make your job easier as an ag teacher, but to make your program look better. And again, no one's perfect. I mean, and yes, we're doing values judging on this, but every program has a SWOT analysis. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Everyone has opportunities and threats. And if you are honest, and that's what an evaluation is, an honest evaluation of the status of your program, and then combine it with an action plan, okay, for making improvements, that's what we're all in here for. We're in here for making values judgments about our educational programs. And again, hopefully they're meeting the needs of our clientele. If they're not, change them, improve them, or close them, do something else. But that's a good example, and thank you for sharing that, Kylie, is using AET to help in the planning process and evaluation process. Excellent. Okay. All right, so moving on. Want to share the next program, share, and I'm going to do evaluation reports, and hopefully this will work again. Okay. Do we have, I'm not sure why, there we go. All right, so, okay, so you've done the evaluation, you've done your IQPS, you've done your program improvement plan, but obviously you don't want to just leave it on a shelf. If you've done a good job of doing an evaluation, honest evaluation, you're going to want to share the results of that evaluation, okay? And we're talking about who you share it with, how it should look and everything. Because again, even if it's negative, you don't want to bury it, okay? If it's negative, well, how can it be improved? If you're not going to improve it, then don't do it again. But you should have a report, some type of report of the evaluation. Now, for an ag program, that may just be the IQPS report, which is fine, okay? Because you don't want to spend extra effort in rewriting everything that's in that report, because you have every criteria and judged 1 through 5. And then if you have an action plan at the end of that, that should be fine. Other programs, though, like an international study abroad program, or especially the solar program, is that you're not judging against any set criteria. You're going to want to do the evaluation. You may have an action plan, but you're going to want to do it in a report, okay? And share that report with people. So that's what we're going to talk about for the next 45 minutes or so. So obviously the purpose of the report is, we talked about formative and summative evaluations at the beginning of the semester. Again, none of you are doing any formative evaluations, but if you were, let's say you're doing a long-term plan or a project that lasts a long time, okay? You may do a formative evaluation and do a report. And again, it's to help improve the program, inform the program staff. How is the program functioning? I use this example is because we just dealt with this a week or two ago, is the Leadership Idaho Agriculture Program. Rick Whately operates that. They select their cohort of participants. Their first week is always in November here on campus. Actually, it's at the Best Western, but they interact with everyone on campus. And then they meet for 4 days, I think Monday through Thursday, and then they'll meet the same time in December, in January, and then in February. So it's a 4-month long, it stretches over 4 months, 1 week each month. So if they were to do a formative evaluation, obviously, and I think actually they do this, but I'm not sure exactly how they do it. But I know at every monthly meeting, the week-long meeting, they evaluate their presentations. So I know Dr. Falk went and presented to them about ag education across the state. We had a breakfast with them, with the department heads and the deans and that, where we talked about our programs and informed them about the department. I know the dean presented to them separately. I know they took a tour of facilities on campus. So I think at the end of every week, they do an evaluation of those presentations, and that gives Rick feedback. It gives him feedback for next month, and it gives him feedback for next year. And I think they rate all these programs, and if the program is rated very low, that program is not added next year. It's not continued. So a formative evaluation, most of you won't be doing formative evaluations, but if you have a long program that you can evaluate during the program, then you would do a short evaluation report of just that component. Now, Trish, I know solar is only 1 week, or actually not even 1 week, it's 2 or 3 days. In Ohio, they have a summer camp that lasts like 5 weeks, and different groups of students come every week. So let's say a camp was like that, is you would try to do a formative evaluation at the end of each week and say, how did this week go? What can we change before the next group of campers come next week? So that would be a formative evaluation during the program to try to make changes that changes that can be done real quickly before the next week. And again, that report may be simple, maybe 1 page or something, because you have to do it quickly. If the camp is a few days 1 week and then you only have a few days in between before the next group comes next week, it can't be real long or detailed. It has to be short, concise, and something you can change real quickly before next week. Okay. What changes can be made to improve the program before the next iteration of it? That could be next month. It could be next week. So most of our programs don't lend themselves to formative evaluations during the program. Now, I should take this back. Tom, your land laboratory is obviously you're operating that land laboratory over the course of a growing season. So you do have components of the planning process, the planting process. You have the component of the growing season, the irrigation process. You have the harvesting process. So yours, you could actually do an evaluation, a formative evaluation of your land laboratory maybe every couple months, okay? You know, the planning process and the planting. So it was the paperwork and the meetings and then the actual planting of the land, land preparation, planting. Then you have the growing season, then you have the harvesting season. So you could do formative evaluations periodically throughout that growing season. Okay. Summative evaluations, which most of you are doing, obviously provide information and judgments about the program's value. So we're judging the solar program, okay, or we're judging an international exchange program. Summative at the end of that program. Assist with decision making within the program for next year. So Trish, if you do this evaluation with solar and help out, give information to Clara Lee and the board, you're helping them make decisions for next year. And then informative to stakeholders. That could be Tom's alumni. It could be the teachers that do an exchange program. It could be the Idaho FFA board for the solar program. Or Kylie, it could be your advisory committee or your school board, your school administration. Okay. And then individuals who want to adopt the program. Now, most of our, with the exception of, well, the two good examples are solar. Maybe another state's looking at adding a camp, or the teacher exchange program. Maybe another land-grant university is interested in replicating that program with another country, ag teachers in another country. So that could be a purpose of the report, is not only to inform the stakeholders, but to inform other people that may want to look at your program and replicate it. The Leadership Idaho Agriculture Program, that's been replicated almost in every state around the country. Now, sometimes the Farm Bureau does it. Sometimes Extension does it. Idaho's is unique because Idaho is independent. It has a standalone organization. And sometimes the Land Grant University College of Ag does it separate from Extension. But most states have those. They were actually started back in the 60s and 70s. The Kellogg Foundation had a major grant to start those types of leadership programs. And most of them have all been evaluated at one point or another. And some of those evaluations have been reported. I had a PhD student at Ohio State who had been in charge of the program when it was at Ohio State. And she actually did an evaluation of that leadership program that she ran. Now, she was an internal evaluator, so she had kind of a little conflict of interest, maybe a little bias, but she did the evaluation as her part of her dissertation. Okay. Other purposes for an evaluation report is demonstrate accountability. I'll give you an example of this right now. Is the university is looking at programs. We've done program prioritization several times. This is like the third time in 5 years we've done program prioritization. So we've looked at our majors, our bachelor's degrees, our master's degree, and I just submitted a couple hours ago to the CAL's administration the report The faculty looked at our programs. We looked at our enrollment, how we're doing. So it's a real short, quick report. We were asked to do it last week. I had to submit it by this afternoon. We looked at enrollments in classes. If we had low enrollment classes, we looked at the majors, the importance of each major, those sorts of things. So we submitted that report to the college, and it's for demonstrating accountability that, and the whole university is looking at this, how much a program costs, how many students are enrolled in the program, how many student credit hours is generated, class enrollments, all those sorts of things. And that's to demonstrate accountability, is that we can justify our program that we shouldn't be cut. Obviously, AgEd is the only AgEd program in the state. We prepare teachers. There's jobs out there. But we had to do that to show accountability to the college and university. To convince people, to educate them, to explore and investigate. So these are all purposes of a report, an evaluation report. Is, Kylie, your program is relatively new there, but to convince them that you're building a strong ag program and a strong FFA chapter. Your goals there of the national chapter. Where is it here? Your goals and outcomes is memorize opening ceremonies, which is real officers, place the district CD and LDEs, national chapter and POA completed on time. So you're convincing them that the effort they put into adding that program is justified. You're accountable. You're building your chapter. You're building a tradition of, and I noticed there you have, I think it talks about, the opportunities. One of your opportunities is not set in traditions so we can create new activities. So you're building that tradition, though, to building a good, strong, quality program by doing all this planning, by using AET, by giving a report to your advisory committee and your administration. So that's all that there is, to accountable, convince the stakeholders, educate them about the program. Relating to educate is when our dean came to U of I from UC Davis, he was an entomologist, he was a department head, but he didn't interact with FFA, AgEd, 4-H, or anything. He knew they existed, but he wasn't intimately aware of what they did. So when he came, the first year or two, we really educated him about our programs, and he was given the honorary state degree because he's been so supportive in the 4 years he's been here. He's been to CDEs. He's talked to our senior teacher candidates. So he now knows what an AgEd teacher ed program is, the value of it. So we did all of that to convince him and educate him about the importance of our program. So that's what an evaluation report does, is to educate and convince stakeholders and the public. To document that's what IQPS is doing, that's what the AET reports are doing. It's documenting what you're doing to show it's going back to the first bullet point, you're accountable. Because we're all public employees, teachers and everything, we are paid by the public. We're paid, the legislature funds our programs, and your local school taxes and everything fund your programs. With a university, the legislature and tuition and everything. So we have to be accountable. So we're documenting everything. We're documenting student credit hours, student enrollments, graduation rates, how long our graduates have been teaching, okay? That our placement rates, we have 100% placement. Everyone that wants a job teaching gets a job teaching somewhere. So we do that all to justify our program. To involve your stakeholders, to gain support from administration, from people in the community, to promote understanding. Some people in your community may not know what AgEd is, okay? Kylie, obviously your community is a lot different than Tom's community, okay? And Trish, West Ada and Meridian's changing, by the day, okay? So you have to promote understanding because there's going to be people out there that say, why on earth does Meridian need an AgEd program? There's not a lot of production ag farms left in this. We're growing houses faster than we're growing crops. So you need to use an evaluation report to educate and convince and promote understanding about the benefits of an AgEd program. Same thing, Olivia in Philadelphia, is WB Sol's been there for decades. It's got support, but that is an urban area. And a lot of people may question is, why do we have a dairy farm in the middle of Philadelphia? So I don't know if they do this type of evaluation or assessment, but to promote understanding and education that there's value in having these programs. Same thing, promote public relations. Okay. So the audiences, okay? Critically important to identify the audiences for the evaluation report. So you're doing an evaluation of your program, Kylie, and Tom, you're doing the land laboratory. Who are the audiences? Obviously, your school administration, your school board. Tom, you're involved the alumni in that, okay? Maybe the Farm Bureau in the community is an audience, okay? Trish, with the solar program, the audiences, first and foremost, are the FFA board, because they're going to decide whether that continues. But obviously, the ag teachers may be interested to see how it went this year or what are the plans for next year. So you need to know, once you do an evaluation, and write up a report, is who is the audience or audiences for this report, because you want to get it out there. And again, it may not all be roses and good things. You want to be honest that maybe you have some great things, maybe you have some bad things. Trish, I know obviously the good thing is the officers in Clearly held a camp. It was the first camp ever, okay? But one of the bad things is that participation wasn't real great. Now, there may be some reasons for that, and you may be able to improve that next year, but that's being honest that participation was well below what their goal was for this year. And there might be reasons behind that, but you want to be honest that participation was low. So often evaluators overlook the audiences, but you got to think about, you're not just going to do the evaluation and forget about it. You're going to do the evaluation, do the action plan for improvement, and then share that with the stakeholders. You shouldn't just forget about it and put it on the shelf and only the people that run the program are interested. Most evaluations have many different audiences. Like I said, is each of your programs will have different audiences. And you want to think about it, and they could be the same group as your stakeholders, but you may have additional groups that are not just your stakeholders. So tailoring your report, okay, is, we call it an audience analysis, is who would need to know what information. A parent may need to know different information than a school board. Or let's say, Trish, with the solar program, is the ag teachers or Idaho FFA members may need to know different information than Idaho FFA board, okay? The board's going to be concerned with finances, can they afford to do this, all right? Or the foundation may need to know information if they want to try to get sponsors for the solar program, all right? Versus what the FFA member or the FFA advisor needs to know about the solar program. So you kind of think through, is we're going to write up this report. Yeah, it's easy just to do one report, but different audiences may need different information. So some may be interested in the financial side of it. Some may not be interested in the financial side. They may be interested in the outcomes of the camp. What did students learn? Did they like it? Those sorts of things. Determine what that particular audience should receive. What are the best channels and procedures to communicate the information? Now, a report can be in different formats. It can be a full written report. It could be a presentation. It could be a poster. Okay. It could be a flyer. It could be a news release. Okay. Let's say obviously, Tom, you're going to do the land laboratory. You're going to have a successful growing season. You may get public publicity about it. You may ask the local newspaper to come in to do a report on it, to show the harvest, those sorts of things. So that gets publicity, but it also shows the public what the chapter did, the successes of the land laboratory. So we want to get out of the idea that a report is just a paper document. It doesn't have to be just a written paper document. Olivia, in your plan, your program activities, you've got a lot of social media ideas. And that's perfect, because showing students or teachers participating in international activities this is one thing I think that we've been lacking, is in all the different trips we do for 407 to all the different countries. I don't think we get a good final report of those. Now, the students do it for class, but it's not, well, I'll share with you how it's done since you haven't been here. So the 407 classes, the international study abroad trips, is they'll do a country profile before they go in March. So from January to March, they'll do a country profile. Then they go on the trip, and then they come back and they'll finalize that, and then they'll make a presentation of that. And usually Dr. Haggerty invites the college, and we've had from a few people to dozens of people participate, and it's towards the end of spring semester. Unfortunately, they had some issues and they didn't do the Ireland one last spring, unfortunately. But they'll do a presentation. So their country profile is the document, but then their presentation is kind of like a video report for whoever wants to attend. Now, the one thing's lacking, though, is I think a social media presence, posting during the trip, whether it's Facebook or whatever. And I'm not a social media expert by any means, but that's a type of almost even formative, because it's during the trip, where students could be posting what they've done each day, photos, who they've met with, what they've seen, reflections, okay, comments in a Facebook post or something. So that's kind of like a formative report, and that's something that we've not been using with 407, and I'd like to build that in for next summer's program. Is it's kind of like a report during, and then people can look at it afterwards.
I also think that agriculture engineering did a great job whenever they had students go to Togo and go build a school down there, and they designed like the curriculum for it, but they had like a GoPro on their student the entire time to like document everything that they did, people that they saw, and then the university posted that. So I mean, even like Tom, you can have like a person like where in your lab outside and like show like the different like seasons and the growing change and the harvesting, and then it could be like your FFA promotional video by doing that. So I don't know, people love those GoPros. I don't get them, but they're cool.
So what ag engineering program did that?
I believe that they're partnering with the College of Ed for Ed Sci. And then, yeah, they went down there and
not here, U of I.
Yeah, U of I. They were building a school and like building the curriculum for it. Dr. Doucet, it's in her area in the Ed Sci department.
Okay. Wow. I'm not aware of that at all. So interesting. I'll look forward to hearing more about that. Okay. So how are we doing? Oh, we're doing fine. Okay. So moving on. So criteria for reports, okay? Two things, truth value, utility value. Obviously, we want to be truthful, okay, even if it's bad news. But looking at truth value is the technical quality of the report. So once you've done your evaluation and you've made conclusions and even recommendations, is you want to be technically correct, okay? Are those conclusions based on good data, okay? And is it valid? I'll give you an example of this. Is we just turned in the report for the college, and we were given enrollment data for classes to look at our low enrollment classes. And the faculty and I went over it yesterday. And anytime you're dealing with data from a large institution like the university, it's usually out of date or inaccurate. And we found a lot of inaccuracies, and we had to go back through and look at all of our enrollment in our classes to say that if you look at it over an average of 3 to 5 years, our classes are not low enrollment. They're actually fine. Low enrollment is anything under 12. So we went back through our AgEd classes and found that over 5 years, our average was 13. So we're doing fine. We don't have low enrollment classes. So we put that in our report I just sent to the college administration. So we tried to be technically accurate and truthful that when you use the correct data, here are the results. Now, it could have come out that we were low enrollment, but it didn't. We were fine, just barely, 13 versus 12. But you want to make sure your data is technically accurate, truthful. Does it correspond to the policymaker's previous understanding and experience with evaluations? Now, again, if you're doing a formal evaluation of a major grant in these philanthropy organizations, you regularly have evaluations like the Peace Corps or Agency for International Development or something like that. You want to make sure that it is corresponding to their normal type of evaluation and evaluation report. Most of our programs is a school board may or may not get evaluation reports, so they may not know what to look for, or they may not have a standard format that they look for. But if you're doing an evaluation for a formal group, you want to make sure you follow their guidelines for what they're looking for. And some of them can be real strict that, yeah, you have to do this type of evaluation and report it this way and report your data, those sorts of things. Utility is a little easier. Utility is the extent to which the study provides explicit and practical direction on the program matters. So now you're using your data, but we want to put it to use. Can we make value judgments? All right. You're providing explicit and practical information and direction on the components of the program. So it's pretty easy to camp. There's a few days, so many students participated, plus the state officers, and Clara Lee and teachers, okay? So you want to make that report very usable and non-jargon. We're going to talk about jargon here in a minute, but very easily understood that they can put that evaluation to good use. Challenges the status quo of the program is, again, you want to be honest and you don't want to try to sugarcoat things. If it's great, fantastic. If it's okay, where can it be improved? If it's horrible, don't try to sugarcoat it. Like, I'll go back to solar. Is maybe an evaluation finds that it's not worth it, that unless we improve attendance, we can't continue to do it for 12 students. Now, if we get 24 students, that might be different. But if you want to challenge the status quo and not try to sugarcoat and make something that's bad look good. Format of reports. A combination of oral and written reports delivered a non-technical language, had a higher impact on the evaluation's audiences, and led to their being more aware of the evaluation and having greater appreciation of its results. So you don't want to try to fool people, or, like I said, is put lipstick on a pig. Okay, if your program is crappy, admit it, and then either change it or scrap it. But this quote says that the way you do a report in non-technical language will have a higher impact, because you don't want to say in 5 pages what you could say in 1 page. Okay, is make it short, make it clear, make it simple, make it easily understood to the audiences, and make your judgments and recommendations. So your report may not be long. Trish, the report on solar, you might have a better idea than I would, but it may only be a couple pages. It does not have to be real long at all, as long as it's providing the right information. Okay. So again, written reports, it could be photo essays, okay? Like we said with the international study abroad trips, is you may use that GoPro to do a photo essay or a video and post those daily or whenever. Audio tape reports or slide, I should take this off there, slide tape presentations. We don't use that anymore. PowerPoints or whatever. Even PowerPoints are old now. Okay. What's the new one? Aaliyah's laughing at me. What's the new one with all? It's PowerPoint.
Sway.
The Prezi.
Prezi.
Sway?
Thank you.
Oh, Sway's another one.
Oh,
I've
that's
never
a-
seen Sway, but I've seen the Prezi presentations. I don't know if I like them or not, but they are PowerPoint on steroids. Okay. So, so again, I should take slide tape presentations off here. It's so old school.
Audio tape reports is a little dated too.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just saying. Beep, flip the film strip. Beep, flip the film strip.
So I need to add Prezi, and I need to add GoPro presentations on the more modern things, Twitter reports, things like that. We don't have many testimonies, okay? But again, like, I shouldn't say that, because if you look at extension programming, extension does tend to use testimonies. They also report almost all the time on face-to-face contacts. And that's a big number that extension uses when they report to the legislature, because they will use statewide, and again, I think it's hundreds of thousands. Barbara Petty just reported this to LIA a couple weeks ago, is how many hundreds of thousands of face-to-face contacts or one-on-one contacts, where if a producer or farmer or parent called extension, or if they participate in a 4-H event, something like that, across the entire state, all the contacts. And then in some cases, you may have testimonies of and it's anecdotal data. It's not, accurate data that's randomly collected or anything. It's anecdotal data, but it can have impact, okay? And show that this one 4-H program, let's say robotics or the STEM program, that program made an impact on this community, on these 4-H kids, then that could be included in the report. Hearings or mock trials we don't do, but again, some cases they'll do meetings or focus groups, displays, simulations, scenarios, portrayals of people that participated, case studies of people that did things in the program or how they use the program. We do a lot of, Extension does a lot of programming for small farm operators, okay? And a lot of times they can use case studies to show that if this producer went through this small farm program and then went out and developed their program, their farm, their small farm operation, then that's kind of like a case study that could show the impact of that program. Graphs, charts, obviously if you're reporting on numbers or participation levels, you may have statistics and tables and charts and things like that. Test score summaries, we do that because our students in AgEd have to take the praxis exam. So when it comes to assessing our program, the College of Ed looks at it, and when they do accreditation, they look at our students and how many of them pass the praxis to go on and be certified as an ag teacher. So in that case, we do use test score summaries, okay? I'm not sure if your evaluations, would you use end of course assessments, the technical skills assessments, the reports on that, how much students pass those, but that could be built into
the workplace readiness report or test that we give. And
yes, exactly. Thanks, Tom. So yeah, that all shows the quality of your program is the TSAs or the workforce readiness, anything where your students test and you can show that they're benefiting from your AgEd program. So that can all be formatted into a report. Oh, then questions and answers. So scheduling reports, formative, it's during a program. And again, we don't have many formative types of evaluation reports, okay? But summative, obviously, at the end of the program. Now, Kylie, you're doing your whole AgEd program. Now, if you do the IQPS, then that's summative, but the program is going to continue, okay? And Tom, yours, you may have that summative at the end of this growing season, but then you're just going to make changes for the next growing season. And the same thing with if solar continues. Then interim reports, again, if you have a long program, you may actually have interim reports, weekly or monthly, or unscheduled when the results are available, those sorts of things. We look at our enrollments by the semester, okay? So we know how our classes are, the enrollments in our classes are going. So by semester and then by year, and then our student, not only student credit hours, but also how many majors we have. They look at that at fall semester mainly, but they'll also look at that at spring semester. So we're doing assessing and evaluating on a continual basis and looking at our numbers, continually here at the university. And then obviously the final report. Again, solar would be a final report. Your land laboratory would be a final report for this year, this growing season. The international exchange, obviously, at the end of that program, you do the final report. So ingredients, you may have an executive, depending on the length of your report. Again, your whole report may only be a few pages, but if it's a longer report, you may do an executive summary. You could actually do an executive summary for an IQPS report, because you could real briefly look at each indicator and tell how it fell. Are you high on certain indicators and low on other indicators? So you may have an executive summary of like a page or so, but then your report, obviously, kind of everything we talked about, if you think of you giving your report to someone that's not knowledgeable of the program, okay? Obviously, Trish, let's take the solar program. Is maybe you might have some board members or foundation board members that aren't aware of the camp. And they may know, yeah, we did a camp last summer, but they may not know a lot about it. So in that case, your report is going to include like almost a contextual description that we did at the beginning of the semester. Is what was the purpose of the camp? Who were the audiences? Who were the stakeholders? Were there limitations? Obviously, limitations to the camp that could be used, limitations to the location of that camp, limitations to transportation for this year at least, okay? So you're giving an overview of that content, all right? And you may include the program with the camp, everything the state officers and clearly had planned out. So in that may be a page in itself, is because your report may have to educate people that aren't aware of the program. So you may have a one-page introduction with this information. And that's why we did the contextual description at the beginning, because that contextual description would basically be this introduction. Then the focus of the evaluation is, what's the object of evaluating it? Is to make judgments, to look at the participation rate, to look at the outcomes. If you asked evaluation questions, or what were the objectives of the evaluation, not only to, for the camp would be to look at participation, look at the planning process, look at the outcomes. We're going to talk next week about another way, and I'll explain it before the end of tonight, but another way of doing an evaluation that can be real formalistic and real easy to understand. And that lends itself to making an easy report. So what are the evaluation questions or objectives of the evaluation, and what information was gathered? Okay. Obviously, the camp, was there an end evaluation given to those students? Did they fill out any form at the end, evaluation form at the end? All right. Tom, with your land laboratory, the students that participated in it, were they asked any questions about their participation? You may have collected data for the hours that they worked, but maybe you collected data for the skills that they learned. Or did they like doing it? Did they learn something about production agriculture? And then the overview of the evaluation plan, okay, is how did you collect that data? Did you collect it during the camp or at the end of the camp? The teacher exchange, we may collect data daily, okay? When we talked about this earlier in the semester, if we do a debriefing at the end of the day, that's almost like a focus group at the end of each day. So looking at what the results of each debriefing at the end of each day was, and then at the end of the experience, when they come back, is doing an evaluation at the end of that experience. So kind of an overview of the plan. And then the results, basically. Summary of the findings is conclusions that you're drawing. All right, how many participated? What did they learn? Okay, interpretation of those results. And then even recommendations, conclusions and recommendations is, and if you had criteria and standards that you used, did it meet those criteria? Did it meet the standards? Again, most of your programs aren't going to have criteria and standards, but based on those results, then you're going to draw conclusions and you're going to make recommendations. So, Trish, the camp is an easy one is, well, here are some conclusions. You had some good things happen. You had some bad things happen. You know, participation was low, but maybe those 12 kids that participated loved it and they gained a lot of valuable leadership skills and knowledge from there. But then you also know that transportation was an issue. That was a problem. So you can draw those conclusions and then make recommendations. Well, if this is going to continue, first of all, you need sponsorship again for next year. You need better recruitment. You need better transportation, maybe better participation of advisors. So you're going to make recommendations in that report. And then that leads to the action plan that we talked about earlier. Is your report may or may not include the action plan, but it should have conclusions and recommendations. Okay. Minority reports, you're usually going to have these, but if anyone did an evaluation or disagreed with the results, then you may have someone that wants to offer their opinion and say, well, I see this evaluation differently. I'm drawing different conclusions, or I want to make different recommendations. So that's normally when you have more of a group doing an evaluation. If you had your advisory committee do your whole evaluation, you may have different people see things differently, and they may want to give their own opinion of it. But again, if you're doing honest and unbiased evaluation, and you have the good, the bad, and the ugly, you don't need a minority report. You're going to include everything. I'll give you an example. When we do evaluations of faculty, and when they do their course evaluations, you try to include the comments. And first of all, if you can have a census and put all the comments in, that's good. Sometimes that doesn't work, but you want to at least have a representation of all the comments, the good and the bad. When we did, and I used this example a long time ago, when we did an evaluation of the FFA magazine, New Horizons magazine, years ago, and we had written comments by FFA members, and we tried to include a wide range of examples of those written comments. So just like when you do qualitative research, and we talked about quantitative and qualitative, the quantitative is the number side. So you may have the numbers of participants at the camp, the solar camp, but then the qualitative side is you may have their comments. And maybe you had the kids love it, but maybe some kids didn't like it. So if you did an evaluation and you had quantitative and qualitative, you're going to report and not all of them, but a unbiased representation of the comments. You're not going to all just include the good and ignore the bad. You're going to include the good and the bad. Okay. SWOT analysis, we talked about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's another report. And that might be your only evaluation report. Okay. If your advisory committee or your group looked at all these things, so that might be a standalone report of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You know, Kylie, you included yours in the whole report, okay? in the AET program. So you have all those things, the SWOT, and then down below you have the goals and the outcomes. So right there I saw taking an honest look at the SWOT analysis and then the goals you had for your chapter and then the outcomes. Okay. So more ingredients then. In some cases, if you had a long evaluation report, you'd have appendices. Okay. When we did the evaluation of the FFA New Horizons magazine, those comments, we came in the report, we had a sample of the comments. But in an appendices, I believe, if I remember correctly, we listed every single comment. You don't want to put that in the report because the report needs to be concise, something someone's going to read. If they want to read every single comment, I should see if I have this electronically. If I can find it, maybe I'll share it with you next week. But we did it a long time ago. It would still be on 5 1/4 floppy disks for all those people.
Hey, I know what that is.
Trish and I are probably the only ones that remember 5 1/4
I have
floppy.
some.
But we included all the comments in the appendices. And then if anyone wants to go and read those page after page after page, they can. But this is for long reports, okay? So description of evaluation plan, design, instrument. So if you have an instrument, you probably wouldn't put that in the report. You'd put it in the appendices. So if anyone wants to look at the instrument and see exactly what questions you asked, you would put it in appendices. So Trish, if you did a survey of those FFA members that went to camp, then you would put the actual survey in the appendices. Detailed tabulations or analyses of quantitative data, that doesn't go in the report. That's all evaluation jargon. You put that in the appendices. And then transcripts or summaries of qualitative data. If you interview people, you're not going to put their whole transcript there. You put that in the appendices. But this is for really long evaluations. Okay. Executive summary talked about can be included at the beginning of the complete report or separately. So it may be the first page or it could be separate. It doesn't have to be long. I wouldn't even say 2 pages. It could be 1 page. Depending on how long your program is, that summary can be 1 page. So I foresee the camp. You could easily have an executive summary of 1 page to give to board or foundation or all the ag teachers, okay? Tom, you could do a 1-page executive summary of your land laboratory. So we're just looking at the land laboratory, not your whole program. 1-page summary of this growing season and everything the land laboratory did. The input, and we'll talk about inputs and outcomes next week. But you could do it easily at 1 page. Kylie, for your whole program, you're probably not going to be able to do. You might be able to do it. You have an AET. So you could do a 1-page snapshot for your school board is based on the AET results, based on IQPS, and show all the good things and the areas of improvement that your program could do. I'll give you an example of this. Is when I was the Boy Scout leader for the local troop my sons were in, we were through the Methodist Church here in Moscow. And I was the first scout leader. I'm not sure if they still do this or not, but we were chartered under the church. So it was always good to have good relationships with the church. But I made it a point to go once a year and give kind of an evaluation report. And Boy Scouts do a formal evaluation and everything. But I did like a 1-page, 2-sided report of everything the troop did. So I didn't want to share everything the way the Boy Scouts do evaluations for quality chapter and everything. Quality troop. But I did a 1 or 2 page kind of executive summary of how many times we went camping, how many kids advanced, how many kids got Eagle, did we do summer camp, how many kids went to summer camp, did we do fall jamboree. So real briefly, and then I went and reported to the church board. And they were thrilled that I came in and put that 1 or 2 page thing together to show them what the troop was doing for that year. So that's what an executive summary is. It doesn't have to be the whole report. A lot of times it can be real short, usually probably no shorter than a page, but fill a page up or 2 sides of 1 page. Very brief description of the purpose, the data collection, but you're mainly going to focus on the findings, the judgments, and the recommendations, because you want this to be something that someone can read real quick and pick up the bullet points of here was the program, here was the results. And again, the camp lends itself perfectly to this. Is here, the state officers put it together. It was this camp on these dates. These many kids participated. These were the results. These were their feedback, okay? And then recommendations for next year, or some conclusions and recommendations. Okay, so real easy 1-page or front 2-page executive summary. Writing style, you don't put jargon in there. Don't put research jargon. Simple, direct language. So that's what people want. They want something they can grasp real quick, read, in just a few minutes, and make their own value judgments of, was this a good program or was it a bad program? Does it need improvement? Use examples, anecdotes, illustrations, quotes, things like that. Correct. You have to have this perfect, just like a thesis would be, is if you're using this to promote your program, you have to have it perfect. I will give you an example is, Tom and Kylie and Trish, the worst thing you can do as a teacher is to give something to a school board and have errors in it. Grammatical errors, spelling errors. That's the worst thing you can do. You're a teacher. It's supposed to be perfect. So that's
the Lou Riesenberg rule.
Say that again?
Don't do that. That's the Lou Riesenberg rule. You don't do that.
Exactly.
You don't clean your overalls either was the other one.
Yes,
that's dated, huh?
You're professional, okay? Olivia, Dr. Riesenberg was our former department head here, my predecessor. So, yeah, again, you're professional. What your report, your executive summary is professional. And we know people make errors, okay? I'll tell you this story. Don't let it go beyond this class. But when Dean Perella came to do his presentation for the dean, he did a PowerPoint presentation. And my wife and I kid about being grammar Nazis because we'll find errors in things. And in Dr. Perella's presentation, there was one little error. I can't even remember what it was. But one little grammatical error that jumped out at me because I look at those things. So you want to try to be perfect. We know mistakes happen. We understand that. But you want to make sure you put the effort into it, making sure that document is as good as possible, perfect as possible. Avoid cluttering narrative with references or notes or things. You want to be real clear and simple. You want to present the information, but present it in a style that people will read easily and quickly. Language is interesting, not dull. You're not going to use research or anything. Appearance and print quality should be perfect. Nowadays, color is very easy to use. Graphics are very easy to use. The page appearance, like I said, color, cover, whoops. So in doing your report, and it could be just a 1-page summary, is it has to look very professional, very clean, good quality print job, good quality graphics, color if possible at all, because color is so easy nowadays. So that makes it look more professional, absolutely more professional. So, okay. All right, let me stop sharing. Okay, very good. We're back. Okay, look at timing, 4:59, perfect timing. When I say 2, I said 2 hours, folks. Okay, so wrapping this up. So we finished kind of last week's topic of looking at evaluating your secondary ag programs. NQPS, or first of all, starting with content standards for your curriculum, your classes, making sure you have that to justify your classes. And that's the program planning side of it. Then we talked about NQPS and IQPS, okay? And doing those based on criteria, approved criteria that's approved by the state division. And then, now that can be a report standalone as it is, but you could also do a 1-page or 2-page executive summary that can be given to a school board or administrator. So they may not want to read through the entire IQPS report because it's numerous pages, but you could easily put that information into an executive summary type document, okay? Then the action plan is very important, because if you do, not only, you don't want to stop at just doing the assessment, the IQPS, you want to do the action plan so that you can use that to go to your administration, go to your school board and say, look, this advisory committee did this great evaluation based on IQPS. Here's where we came out. Here's things that are 5s that are exemplary, or here's that are 1s that are real low. Here's the 10 things we want to focus on, a variety of 1, 2s, and 3s. Some can be short term, some can be a little longer term, intermediate. Here's what we want to focus on. Here's the action plan for getting there. Now, it may take time, it may take money, okay? Your school board may have to approve things. Some things may be easy, like I use the example, buying a welder or something. Some things may be easy, you can do real quickly. Others may be long term. Maybe you want to have a great horticulture program and you need a greenhouse. So that may be a priority, but a priority is going to take a couple years. But you need to start now, and planning, can't wait, is if you know your program needs it, if you know it's a priority, it should be on the action plan, and you should start today, even if it's going to take a couple years to get that greenhouse, okay? Let's say you did it now, where at the end of 2019, maybe your goal is by the beginning of the 2021 school year, which is only a year and a half away, you would have a greenhouse available. So, but you want to start now in the planning process. So you put that in an action plan. You then share that action plan with the stakeholders, school boards, school administrators, parents, alumni, whoever, to show that you have a plan, you need resources, and that's in place. And then whatever type of report you do, you can just do the IQPS, but you may do a short summary, a few pages, executive summary. Now, for the solar plan, for the solar camp, or for the land laboratory, you may have a little longer report and still have a 1-page executive summary too. But again, depending on your report is determined by the nature of your program. So with the teacher exchange, it lends itself perfectly to really a social media type thing of posting things and seeing what is going on even during the trip, okay? And then doing an evaluation at the end of the trip also. So, okay, so that kind of wraps it up. Now, the plans for moving forward, next week is a regular class. So next Wednesday, November 20th, okay? We're gonna kind of look at the type of evaluations that Extension really uses, and it's called the logic model. And it's very easily understood, and it might be a type of model you want to follow. SWOT analysis is kind of one type of model. The logic model is one that Extension uses extensively, and we're going to kind of walk through the logic model. I've got a shorter presentation than a real long one that University of Wisconsin did. I got to see which one I want to use. Then I may use both of them actually. And I may actually send you a reading to do before the logic model. It's the Idaho's summary of the logic model. So I might try to send that to you or post it before class next week. So we'll spend next week just looking at the logic model. I gave you the 2 readings for the second readings evaluation. We'll try to talk about that at the beginning of next week's class also. And then the only thing that's left really is the program improvement plan. And I'll talk more about that next week. And basically, it's basically talking about what we talked about tonight. But again, we'll have to figure out for some of you, because you haven't done the plan or done the evaluation, to do a program improvement plan. But I want to talk about that, and I'll talk about really the final class session of December 4th. Because really, I may have you just walk through, from the very beginning to the very end of, the contextual description of the program, what the program entails. Okay. Tom, your growing season plan for your land laboratory was great from beginning to end. Okay. From the planning stages all the way through the end evaluation. So I have you walk through all that and then walk through doing an evaluation. What would you assess? How would you assess it? Okay. What questions would you ask? And then how would you report that, or to who you would report it to? So by next week, I'll probably have that laid out for you. And then that would be the final class session on December 4th. So we kind of take it from the beginning of the planning stages all the way through, if you're doing an evaluation and reporting an evaluation, what it would look like. But I'll walk you through that next week. Questions, folks, or anything? I know I just got another email. Thank you very much, Tom. If you've still got those things outstanding, let me have them as soon as you can. I'll get you evaluations back to you as soon as I can, so you get feedback and we're not putting it off. But otherwise, have a great week, everyone. Keep giving me those assignments in, and I will put things. Trish asked about putting the PowerPoints up on BB Learn. I'll try to do that in the next couple of days or so to get more of all these PowerPoints that we've done over the course of the semester, get them all up on BB Learn. I didn't put the readings up there. I emailed them directly to you. I'll try to put those up there also, but I'll try to update the BB Learn site so you have all of that. So, questions or anything?
If we haven't done that first reading evaluation, can we still turn that in?
Yeah, no problem.
Perfect.
Yep. That is up on the AgEd magazine. And again, it's just one article.
5 1/4 floppy, Tom.
What's that?
You gotta do it on a 5 1/4 floppy if you want to turn it in
Oh,
late.
good. On my dial-up internet.
It's not the whole issue. It's just one article in the issue.
Right.
I'll tell you, I'll end with this story. This is dating myself. Is when I took a graduate course at Michigan State, we had an acoustic modem where the old handset, we used to have to put that in the modem. And that's how I did one of my first graduate courses, because I was teaching in rural Michigan, and I connected up with an acoustic modem to Michigan State to do an online course. So that's how old we've been doing this.
Yeah, you lost me on that one.
My online courses involve the post office, okay?
Thank you, folks. Have a good week.
All right, thank you.
Right.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
They say thank you.